So when you're working in Illustrator, it's good to know how to modify the default settings of the features and functions of the whole program. So I'm just going to give you some common modifications and things to know about the system preferences when you're working. So to access the preferences, there's a couple ways we can do it. We can come up here to the application menu and go to Illustrator CC, and right here is the preferences, and we can go through this itemized list. My favorite way of getting to my preferences, and it's the easiest way, is Command K. And so when you open up this window, you're going to see on the left categories related to all the different aspects of Adobe Illustrator. I'm just going to point out some things that I use very commonly when I'm working in Illustrator. The first thing is my keyboard increments. This is how much your cursor or points will move using the arrows on your keyboard. So right now I have it set to 1/4 of an inch, but there may be times when you want to go a little bit smaller than that. And so you can manually input, let's say 0.01, and I'll just press return. And so that means when I move things, they're going to move in much smaller increments. If I go back to Command K to my preferences, and then I change this to 0.25 and click OK. Now we can see I'm moving objects in larger increments. So I'll go back into my preferences, Command and K. The other thing important about the general settings is this feature right here, Scale, Strokes, and Effects. This is basically when you are sizing things, do you want to keep things proportional, or do you want the size of the strokes and effects to stay the same no matter how big or small you make your object? So if I'm taking this square here and I want to scale it down to a very small size, when I have these scale, stroke, and effects checked, it's going to proportionately keep that stroke to the size of this individual rectangle or square. So if I increase the size, it'll increase the stroke along with that. However, if I go back into my preferences and I uncheck the scale, stroke, and effects, and now when I size that square down, now you can see it maintains the size of that stroke no matter what size the object is. I'm going to go back into my preferences, Command K, and just pointing out some more options you have with your selection and anchor display. One common thing to use is this snap to point. So this just allows you to not have to be so precise when you're getting your cursor or other tools close to points and lines. It'll snap within, in this case, 2 pixels. Another important aspect is the units that you work with in Illustrator. So right now I'm working in inches, but we can work in points, picas, millimeters, centimeters, and pixels. We can also choose how our strokes are measured and how our typography is measured. Usually I keep these at their default point measurement, but I will often use pixels or inches for my other work. Now this is a system-wide way of measuring. There's another way we can change how we measure things on our document. So in the control panel, I can come up here to a button that says Document Setup, and in here I can actually change to a specific set of measurements I want for just this particular document. So right now I'm setting it to pixels, but I'll go back into my preferences, go back into units, and I can change this to inches. Just know you have that available to have the system and the particular document read at different kinds of measurements. The other thing to pay attention to is your guides and your grids. So your guides are things that help you to draw and guide through certain parts of a drawing. You can set the particular color for your guides and how they look. For your grids, it's good to know how to use your grids for working on web-based artwork. And I try to make sure that this option here, grids and back, is unchecked. That just makes sure that when I'm working and I turn on my grids, that they overlay all of my objects. So without this option, if I go back into guides and grids and I put them in back, I just find some limitations with working on things and not being able to see the grid over the top. These smart guides are an awesome feature in Illustrator that helps you draw with graphic precision, and we'll be using these a lot more in the future. But just kind of a demonstration of what these can do. You can find your smart guides by going to the View menu and looking for the smart guides to be checked. And you can also toggle it on with Command U. And basically what these do is these try to find tangents, points, right angles, and other coincidences between your objects that help you kind of line them up manually. So if I grab the rectangle tool and I hover next to this other square, it tells me that I'm intersecting this path right now. So if I were to start drawing another rectangle, it would be perfectly flush with this one. I'm going to go ahead and bring down the size of that stroke. It can also find the center of objects. So right now, if I hover close to the center of that last rectangle, it will actually tell me that I'm at the center. So I can click and drag another shape from that center point. I can draw a line. I'll hold down on the Shift key to make it perfectly horizontal. And then my smart guides can tell me that this is the center of that line. So I can go ahead and get close and it'll tell me that I'm intersecting. It's also giving me a center point line. So I can click and drag, holding down on the Shift key. It can also find the endpoints so that I can draw parallel lines too. We'll be working a lot more with smart guides, but just so you know, the options for the smart guides can be found in the preferences. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to show you in preferences is the user interface. So the user interface by default has a certain type of canvas background, and we can change that. So right now we see canvas color, it says match user interface for brightness. We can also change this to the original white interface that Illustrator used to have, or we can go ahead and choose some of these other colors for the whole system. So this is working with Illustrator in a really dark setting, and it goes all the way from this very dark gray all the way up into a bright white. And so that's all I really wanted to show for the preferences. This is really going to help you guys out in fine-tuning how you like to work in Illustrator.